Hello and welcome to the Inside Risk and Compliance podcast. I'm your host, Adam Spencer, Director of AJ Fox Compliance, a specialist recruitment agency focusing on all things law firm risk and compliance. I have seen so many people carve amazing and fulfilling careers in this space, and it really has been a pleasure speaking to people who enjoy doing what they do every day. However, one thing that has really stood out to me is how hard it can be for people to access the bigger picture outside of their team, outside of their firm. We created this podcast to share with you some of the insights, experiences, and stories of the most interesting people succeeding inside risk and compliance. In this episode, we speak with Mike Chapman, Managing Director responsible for the Global Business Acceptance Team at Allen & Overy Shearman, about what it takes to build a long and impactful career in legal risk and compliance. Mike reflects on his journey from entry-level analyst at Linklaters to senior leadership roles at firms like Dentons and A&O. Sharing how the compliance function has grown in scope, visibility, and strategic importance along the way. We explore how global risk teams navigate reputational and commercial challenges in a fast-moving world, the unique dynamics of Swiss Verein structures, and how compliance professionals can develop the confidence to contribute at the highest levels. If you're early in your career or managing a growing team, this conversation offers valuable insights into how to build influence, stay commercially aware, and keep learning, all while helping your firm move forward safely and effectively. Enjoy. So Mike, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. Thanks for making it. It's great to have you on board.
You're welcome.
So we've given a little bit of an intro already, but obviously you'll do a better job of it. So do you want to just give us a couple of bullet points about who you are and what you're up to at the moment?
I don't know if I will, but I'll try. My name's Mike Chapman, and I'm the Managing Director in charge of Business Acceptance at A&O Shearman.
Okay, awesome. And you got into the world of risk and compliance pretty early on, I guess,
I did,
in the grand scheme of things, and so have had a pretty interesting career path. So I wanted to talk through that a little bit. So if we take it right back to the beginning, how did you find your way into risk and compliance?
I mean, it's a good question. It's probably going... I feel old now when people ask me this question. It started at Linklaters when I think risk and compliance was a new kind of area, pretty small team from memory. I mean, it is going back 20 plus years, so my memory's terrible. And that grew and got bigger.
How did you even, just going before that though, how did you even come across that opportunity in the first place?
Well, I was at Linklaters, so
right.
And it was the time where they were looking for people to go and join this new function, and they made it quite attractive. They sold it.
How did they sell it?
I honestly can't remember. It's on, but it just sounded like an interesting. It was being headed by a partner who was moving into the role. The team was kind of new and vibrant. It was all this in-house. I mean, frankly, one of the big selling points is that you're out of the practice environment. You're away from chargeable hours and all that kind of stuff. Bit more work-life balance. I mean, we'll touch on that in a bit, perhaps. But also just sounded quite interesting.
Yeah.
Just quite exciting. A couple of other people I knew that were doing it, and it was quite a small little team. So it was quite, and a lot of those people I'm friends with still now, and that's like 20 plus years ago. And I think that kind of proves that it was the right decision to go into. The rest is, I know it's cliche, but the rest is actually history after that, because I haven't moved away from it. I was there for a good, I'd say 8 years, I think it was. I went to Mayer Brown for a year, which was just purely from a career perspective to experience the US side of something different, but still within the same kind of community and space, away from kind of Magic Circle, big corporate, but into big corporate but US focus, because it has a completely different dynamic attached to it.
Well, but just before we move on to the Mayer Brown piece,
sure.
What were you actually doing at Linklaters? And I know it might be hard to remember that 20 years ago, but what did the team look like? You must have been there through a big period of change.
I think we were there. I think I must have been there through the financial crash, going back all those years. I remember Lehman.
Yes.
So that's 2011.
Oh, don't test me. Okay.
I think. Probably something around then. So I started entry level, right? I started as an entry level analyst, looking at things that come into the business, and then working with the then in-house legal team to resolve the issues. But that was my entry. That was my footing. Is to start. If you want the kind of poor analogies at the bottom of the ladder, entry level, and work your way up. And I worked my way up through 8 years into different roles and phases at Linklaters, and you get to be known in firms, right?
Yeah.
You spend 8 years, and if you're semi-decent, people know your name, and you pick things up, and you just carry on and you carry on.
And was there something, once you'd arrived into the role and sort of started to get to grips with what it was all about, was there a point at which you realised that this was probably going to be your career path? Because obviously you stayed there for 8 years.
A lot of that was down to the team, so I was very happy in that role, working with the people that we worked with. It was a great team, and when you work with great people, time does actually fly again, like cliche number 2.
We'll stack them up, it's all
I
good.
know, I'll try and keep them down. But it was that just kind of made it a really fun environment to work in. I think it also professionally increased in its importance, so the team got bigger and bigger and bigger, and you could kind of feel that it was developing into something more important. You were getting seats at tables, making big decisions with big partners back in the day, and they were coming to you for questions and answers, like Lehman. They came to you for advice on the Lehman situation, which was chaotic. And you could just feel the regulation changing. There was a direction of travel which was only one way, which was that this is going to become quite an important area. I can't see law firms not having this function within them anymore, because you have to remember, before that, going back even longer, this didn't exist. This world didn't exist. Law firms have been around for hundreds of years, but these functions, these in-house functions, are relatively new in the grand scale of things. So people kind of self-managed, and that was never really sustainable as the world changed and regulation changed and conduct rules changed across the world. And you could kind of just sense that this was only going one way, and that was kind of going to be up. And frankly, that is what's happened. I think of just under 8 years, very happy at Linklaters. Left there at a more senior level to move into that management role at Mayer Brown. Again, more focused on kind of conflicts and conflicts assessment, but kind of more taking ownership of that assessment process on the UK side, but applying the US model really, because Mayer Brown is ultimately more US based than it was then.
And how was that? Is there an innate sort of tension between the two sets of rules?
There is, fundamentally there is. But it depends how businesses structure as to how they deploy them. But yes, ultimately, as people know that listen to this, in UK and US conflict rules, there is complete tension. They are different things, and some firms structure in a way that they apply a US model throughout their business. Some don't if they don't need to. Some do bits and both, depending on where they practice and where they're safe to. But with Mayer Brown, it was more of a US model being applied across the global business, and that was just interesting to get that perspective, just a different way of analysing things.
And how long were you at Mayer Brown then?
That was slightly shorter. That was about a year, and then I was approached to join Dentons, as it was S&R Denton back in the day. And that was my first head role. So that was my first head role to take on during their merger, and now I'm going to forget the names. I'm very sorry to the people that still work there, but it was I remember Denton Hall Wild Saps. Yes, that's it. Merging with Sonnenschein to become S&R Denton. So they were looking for that head of conflicts role.
Was that something you had already seen yourself looking at that sort of level before that opportunity came your way, or was it?
No, it kind of came again from memory. It kind of came as an approach, and it was just a huge opportunity. Like, it was a great opportunity. I was pretty young in my career still to take on a head role that early on, in a time when there was a combination and they were looking for a bit of experience in that area, and I'd had it through Linklaters, and what I brought to them was that US piece as well, albeit just for a year, but had both kind of sides, and going through a combination with an American firm was what they were looking for. So then stayed there. Again, for about 8 years. There's a theme starting to develop.
What kept you there for 8 years then? What was
just the growth again? Again, similar themes, right? And cliche number 3, I'm going to lose count, but just the growth and the importance of the function. So the firm went through a rapid change, rapid expansion. Its model as a Verein meant that it was increasing its offices and its locations and its teams, and that meant that the function grew and grew and grew. And again, team, right? You'll see with me that there are themes on this. Great team, like really great team. Again, still really good friends with a lot of them. An incredible team, probably elite lawyers that I worked with, analysts, managers, just a good group of people within that team. But exciting as well, because that model with that bolt-on model with the Verein structure meant that you were always having more and more volume to deal with.
Yeah, it's a very different model, isn't it? And I'm not going to suggest I'm super familiar with it, but especially for those listeners who might have never heard of the concept of a Swiss Verein structure, can you describe it, and what are the challenges that creates for a risk and compliance team?
Yeah, sure. So a Swiss Verein is just essentially a different way of structuring a business. Ultimately the brand is the name, and then underneath the legal structure is something slightly different. So instead of, in comparison to say an A&O Shearman, which is a combined global partnership under the A&O Shearman brand and umbrella, a Verein structure will have the name, but then different LLPs or structures that sit under it, and that's done for a number of reasons, which kind of are well publicised, but the strain for compliance or a risk or an in-house legal function is that you, to an extent, sometimes lack that global approach. So you are ultimately sometimes dealing with, despite under a big umbrella, potentially different competing interests with different structures and different limbs of that business moving in slightly different directions. Which in itself is a great challenge, because like you're in the centre in our world in kind of negotiating those positions out and working again to try and find an outcome that's beneficial to everybody, keeps the firm safe, makes the firm do well, get good instructions, keeps the clients happy, all those things, but with a slightly different skill set that you need to be able to bring those people together.
And do you have to treat the separate entities as separate entities, and presumably they retain
that's
cultural
the challenge.
elements?
That's the challenge with the Verein, is that you absolutely can't treat everyone as separate entities, because then otherwise you just become brother and sister firms. Right? You're operating under a common goal, common strategy, common culture, common approach, but ultimately underscoring all of that is frankly an element of legal separation. Just different challenges. But I grew in that role, enjoyed it, and then moved into in the last kind of 2 to 3 years at Dentons in a global co-head role. So instead of focused on the UK, Middle East and Africa, took that on with my co-head on a global basis. There were 2 of us because it was massive.
I recall you doing a lot of travelling.
There was a lot of travel. A long time ago. That's back in when I was a young man. But not so much anymore. Yes, there was a lot of travel, but that was ultimately because of the model, which required, when you build those firms into that Verein structure, you kind of start to build up a playbook. So you get people that, whether it's IT or the marketing or in-house teams, you go out and you can talk to those firms about what the process is and what the approach is and how you do things, and you can just rehearse that playbook. So there was a fair bit, but again, hugely interesting, saw some amazing places, met some amazing people, amazing experience. I wouldn't change it for the world, but less travel these days.
Yeah. So what was the next chapter then? So you were at Dentons during a period of growth and change, big role, like you said, another 8 years.
Yeah,
a lot of interesting
now
people.
I said 8 years. I've been at A&O Shearman 8 years, so I need to go tick over more years. So they then moved to Allen & Overy as the global head of the business acceptance unit, which was just an opportunity when a Magic Circle law firm comes, and you have to consider it, right? It's a great opportunity, and I was always intrigued by Allen & Overy because they always had this kind of Magic Circle reputation of being the friendly Magic Circle law firm. And I was always I didn't really understand what that meant. I thought, Linklaters was pretty friendly. I've never worked at Clifford Childs or Freshfields, but Allen & Overy really was kind of friendly. Like you kind of just got that feel straight away. And I think for me professionally, I just had that moment where I wanted to go back into using a different set of skills instead of that negotiation structure under the Verein model, where I was looking to go back into that that partnership model where it was slightly, you're deploying different ways of making sure you get the right outcome. So and frankly, with one of the biggest firms out there, it was made no sense not to.
Yeah. So what was the role? What you expected it when you landed, and how has it sort of developed over time?
It's developed. It was what I expected to an extent. I think I had been out of the magic circle for 10 years and going back into it, and I think we'll touch on this during our conversation, just the uptick in pace and kind of like targeted pressure, and just because of the volume of work that they do and the matters and the clients and the issues that they work on, whilst across all law firms is astonishingly difficult, you just feel like a little change in pressure with those with the big guys. You do feel that you're kind of like being tested on stuff that's in the news, or you'll watch the 10 o'clock news the day after and go, oh, I did that yesterday, or I knew that was coming. So it's a different form of kind of pressure. But I'm going to say it again, incredible team. Like I could see that straight away. Incredible team, incredible structure, well respected. You could see immediately that function was well respected within the business. And before we started, we were talking a little bit about how these things used to look like business prevention or internal police, or people like saying no to things, or just being like checklist people, whatever. It's absolutely not the case anymore. In my view, it never really has been, but you could see that straight away that this was a function that was entrenched in the business and respected within the business. And we've been through some crazy stuff together as a team in the last 8 years with reflections of the world and everything that's been going on. And then I moved into the managing director role about a year ago.
What is a managing director role at A&O? What does that mean to be a managing director?
It's equivalent to partner, but on the non-fee earning side. So it's just the title that you get given on the non-fee earning side.
Okay, fantastic. I just wanted to take a moment out to thank our amazing sponsor, the International Compliance Association. The ICA are the leading professional body for the global regulatory and financial crime community, offering professional qualifications, world-class events and training. Go check them out online, and if any of the certificates or courses take your fancy, then you can get 10% discount using our code AJFox10 at checkout. And you mentioned obviously a really well-respected team. And I know there'll be a lot of people out there building teams, or maybe moving up the ranks and seeing themselves in a position where they'll be building a team at a firm at some point in the future. I guess it's a point that a lot of people are heading to in their journeys in this space. And they'll be wondering how to earn that respect from the business. There's a lot of people talking about the challenge of making sure the fee earner population understand the value of the risk and compliance function. Have you got any thoughts, ideas, or tips for people trying to create an environment where the team is respected in that way?
You have to listen. I know it sounds silly, but there's a lot of listening. You also have to remember that the role of what we do in-house functions is to diffuse, right? I do not get phone calls from people with good stories, or something nice to say. Usually something will come to my desk because there's a problem, right? So you're always on that level of alert. So. And sometimes you just need to let that sit a little bit. So the trap you could fall into is dealing with something immediately. You can see the emails coming in, you can see the phone ringing. Probably shouldn't be saying this, but 5 or 10 minutes of just not answering those phone calls, or just letting the email sit a little bit, usually diffuses a lot of what the tension is about. You can probably have more sensible conversations. I wouldn't be falling into the trap of reacting to absolutely everything, immediately, because sometimes it just needs to settle a little bit, because emotions do run high on important subject matters, and our role in these functions is to navigate those through, increasingly with commercial reputational risk. When we talk about what I've done in this space over 20 or so years, then it started very technical. Right? It started really technical, and that's why I went to Maybrand to learn the US positions, and it was about the conflict rules and the technicality and the consents and how you draft the waivers and this and that and everything else. it's moved like dramatically into commercial and reputational risk these days. And when you're dealing with that stuff, and that stuff is coming into your inbox and your phone's ringing, and these days, I mean, every phone rings, right? Like it's Teams and your mobile's ringing, and then it's the same thing on a computer. No one has phones anymore. It's different.
Yeah.
But you're dealing with commercial and reputational risk where everyone has, even though they've got their professional views, a personal standpoint as well. And you have to understand that and respect that when that's coming into you.
And I guess especially for people who might be new to this space or very early in their careers, how do you actually go about assessing reputational risk? And even to the point of, are there specific tools you use?
I mean, it's a great question. The short answer to that is it's case by case. It really is case by case. When I look at the team and what we expect as a global function, it's just having I'm going to say it's another cliche. I was trying to avoid it, but I can't.
Keep them coming.
It's a finger on pulse.
So they're cliches because they make sense in many occasions.
But it's about understanding what's going on in the world, right?
Yeah.
Because as an analyst in a function, and our team's big. There's like way over 100 in the global team. No one person can see absolutely everything that comes into a business at the size of A&O Shearman. There is a responsibility on everybody within that function to pick things up. And when you look at commercial and reputational risk, a lot of that is just about understanding what's going on in the news. I mean, it's really that basic.
Yeah.
Reading the news, paying attention to it, because if you get a search or a request that comes in from a part of the world that you're not massively familiar with, but it's on the front page of every major news out there, you'll analyse that completely differently. You'll take that in a different direction to where it might go. I had our US team together in New York a few months ago, and it was the time the terrible news was breaking about Al Fayed, and I literally just threw a little test question out to the team and asked, who knows what's in the news about Al Fayed? And there was about 50%, and it was on every major outlet. It was that day. It was on ABC, NBC, BBC, all the news outlets. That we expect people to know what's going on, because if you then get something that comes into your business that says, I'm advising the Qataris in relation to Harrods, who now own Harrods, that whole thing has a completely different perspective against the backdrop of the news.
Yeah.
If you don't look at the news, you might just look at it technically, commercially in a different angle.
Yes.
If you look at it against the news, it goes in different directions within the business. So it's a really, really important thing that we drill into people unashamedly, and people at work hear it from me constantly.
And it just must be an enormous challenge, because it's a global issue, right? The news could come from anywhere, and I imagine being fully on top of the news is impossible. You can't be fully on top. It
is impossible, and we don't want people to be kind of reciting page 6 of the Times every morning. But we do expect people to understand what's going on. We live in a crazy world. It is condensed. I won't reel out all the stuff that's going on in the world. People know, but it's. When you're in a law firm, that reflects in your clients. Your clients have questions about usually highly topical geopolitical issues. I mean, the biggest one to talk about is ESG, right? We don't need to go into it too deep, but ESG as itself is hugely complex, politically, personally, commercially, reputationally. But so just understanding that there is an issue there, and understanding that coal mining is political and damaging. That's the kind of level that we want. But just really kind of reacting to those things that change. If companies are big companies, if we think about Thames Water back in 2023, that was when it had a bit of a wobble. That's the kind of stuff we want people to know about. We want to know that if that company is a big company, it's a brand name, it's on the news, we want people to know that that's something that they need to keep an eye on, because if that comes into somebody in any part of our global network, in any part of our global team, then we want them to know that they've got to look at Thames Water slightly differently. And
then how is it dealt with? How is it actually analysed? And ultimately, does it end up just coming to people have to take a view on it as a group?
It depends what the issue is, and again, kind of going back to the relevance of these functions. the importance of these functions is a lot of that should be dealt with within the function. If the functions have the trust of the business, then a lot of it should just be dealt with at that level.
When you say the function?
The in-house functions.
The in-house function, yeah.
Otherwise, what you'll end up doing as a structural basis is anything remotely complicated kicking out to a key decision maker, whoever that might be.
Yeah.
And my view at the moment is that certainly you would be doing that pretty much every day, and whether that decision maker is whoever it is in your hierarchy as a business, but they'll be inundated with stuff that's probably part of their role, but not all of their role. It depends on the question. It depends on the question. You know, we have a structure within the team that's supportive. So the in-house lawyers, the senior in-house lawyers, will all look at the issues together. They'll get raised, dealt with, spoken to with the partners, the practice leaders, the sector leaders, depending on the issue or whatever structure you have. I will get involved depending on how complicated it is or where it needs to go to form a view. And ultimately, if it's really difficult and we can't resolve it together as a group, we'll take it to our leadership structure at A&O Shearman, and it will be our role as, you know, and I think it's important to kind of reflect a bit on the structure, is central management, right? So we're within the central structure of the firm. Our job is to make sure that the firm is safe, profitable, does well for its people and its clients. But we've got, you know, that's it, you know, we're objective, you know, so we will present the objective facts. Of course, if we're asked for a view, I'll give a view, or we'll give a view on behalf of the team. And then it's a kind of a yes/no question.
And conversely, do you think there should be, or there already is, an onus on the fee earners who are hopefully immersed in their space and pride themselves usually on their commercial awareness to also have a finger on, to take another cliche, to have a finger on the pulse of, you know, the risks within their sectors? Or
they should, and they are very good at it. But I think they also know that it's a lot easier for someone else to say no. I could imagine. And you touched upon earlier the fact that, and we spoke earlier as well about the fact that risk and compliance should be seen as the advisory function that it is. What exactly do you mean by that? I mean, I think what I mean by that is that we've, again, reflecting on A&O Shearman, but also with a lot of the other teams that I see and I've worked with, we've got specialists within our areas. We've got specialist financial crime lawyers, specialist sanctions lawyers, specialist conflict lawyers, people that experience from different parts of practice, or whether that be law firm practice or different industries, that bring something to every question, because as we said just now, every question is different. You can have a model and you can try and apply it, but every question will be slightly different and every answer will be slightly different. And that's unique, right? Risk functions, certainly within law firms, have this weird bird's eye view of absolutely everything that comes into the business. Nobody else within the structures do. So you see the flow, you see the questions, you see what's topical, and for people not to treat that as an advisory function is just mad in my view, because there's nobody else that has that oversight, and you can tell what's kicking off, what might kick off, what's thematic, you know, what's busy, what's not busy, but also with people that operate in that space day to day. So, you know, when you are, to your point about partners and being specialists and having their fingers on pulses in their respective areas, absolutely. But they won't necessarily see everything else that the business deals with or touches on. So, you know, very rarely are these things completely binary and siloed, and you eventually have to filter off into so many different directions, and that's where these functions within law firms have huge capacity.
And do you think there are scenarios where that value is not being utilised? It sits there, because it must sit there within all firms, really. Their teams sit in that intersect. Or maybe there's more that firms could do with it, I guess, is another.
I mean, it's a weird. So I can't speak for everybody. Certainly with us, we're fully utilised. You know, so there's never really a dull moment. It's a weird kind of pressure when you work in these functions. So if you compare it to a transactional lawyer, and you might be working on a really complex case or a deal or a litigation or an investigation or whatever it might be for many, many months, and there's pressure attached with that, and there'll be deadlines and filings and whatever else. Ours is like a repetitive constant pressure in that yes, they will have the complex issues, but we're not going to be working on deals for like 6 months, or we're not going to be working on something for a year. I bumped into a partner on the way out who was preparing for a trial in June, and that's not our world, right? So ours is a constant, consistent pressure dealing with high volume, and the pressure there is to make sure that all the things that we've just spoken about, you're applying that to every single request, because that margin of error, and again, the team hate me saying this, but the margin of error is close to zero, right? Because if we get it wrong at our entry level, and then it just kind of snowballs. And people we get things wrong. Like, people are human, humans are human. People make mistakes. That's completely legitimate. We've got intelligent systems that try to back us all up, but we have to deploy that kind of base level of analysis to be able to at least start the process.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And you've obviously in your career been involved in the growth of, directly, indirectly, various business acceptance teams, right? And those functions have grown enormously.
Yeah.
Across the spectrum at all sorts of different firms. They've taken on different shapes and sizes. But I think the career path of an analyst is a bit different now, perhaps, or there are different challenges for the analysts and challenges for the people managing and hiring the analysts. What do you think it takes nowadays for someone to be successful if they're starting from the ground level? Are there things that you would advise them that will help them invest in the right areas to improve their career trajectory?
I mean, I've got a really easy answer to that.
Easy answers are good.
Easy answers are good, yeah. Drive and enthusiasm.
Okay.
Right? And I genuinely mean that, because we, certainly within A&O Shearman, and certainly the way that I've looked at teams in the past, it is that team environment. We try to foster a great team environment. People that have got each other's backs, work hard. I was going to say play hard, but I'm not doing the more cliches. But just fit in and slot. I will take team culture, drive, enthusiasm over the most qualified person on the planet, because you can teach the qualifications, you can teach the processes, you can teach the rules, you can teach that, all of that you can teach that. You can't teach actually someone who just genuinely wants to fit in, slot in, do well, and frankly, if you have that energy, you can do pretty much anything. Firms of any size are supportive for generally, but if you want to develop and you want to move and you want to go forward and you show people that, you will be supported 100%. I
can't remember where I heard the phrase, but I think it's culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Nice.
But it's
I won't be using it.
But I guess it's the idea that if you have the right culture, a lot of what else you want out of a team, hopefully is forthcoming. But what is it that people need to do to show that drive? What does that actually mean to you?
But this is why I think it's an interesting question, right? Because I don't think you can get people to show it. I think that's a person's character or personality. That's what I mean. But you can't. It's very hard to change character or personality. It's very easy to train somebody on a document or a process, or this is where you have to send this escalation, or these are the people that lead this sector. That's easy, but you can tell from people, and I've certainly seen a shift in doing it so long. When you interview an entry level, and the managers are very good at this as well, but you can pick up, they'll come back and they'll say that, this person was great, they've just got this, they're going to fit in, they've got that energy, they really want to be here, and it depends on where you're working, but pretty much any law firm of any size or caliber, and the ones that you work with are prestigious places to be in, and you should kind of, it sounds a bit, again, cliched, but you kind of forget that, these are leading international law firms, and give it that kind of respect as well.
I think one of the things we've certainly seen, we work with all sorts of firms, but especially the larger firms, and the sort of analyst cohort, AML analyst, complex analyst, AML and complex analyst, that sort of group, is that it feels as if, and I obviously can't speak for everybody, but it feels as if there's a pressure on people to qualify their own success against title and salary, rather than actually being really, really good at what they're doing. And so I think we see people getting validated by moving for an increase in salary or moving for a title, but are they actually honing their art? I don't know. And so we see many fewer people just stay put, and get to the point where they're maybe seeing more trends? I don't know if that's something you've seen or.
I mean, I understand that perspective, right? Because the world has changed and people moving for big money or title I get that. I mean, I like the fact you call it an art. Thanks so much. But maybe not an art. But I get.
Well, I mean, some of it you can't write it down.
No,
right?
you can't.
Yeah.
I do. Look, I see it. I get it. I mean, put it simply, do we pay the highest salaries in the market? No, nobody expects us to. We don't. We're not unashamedly. We don't hide that. You can just go and look at it. You can go and see that massive US law firms will pay more. Right? We get that. We understand that. We know that. We kind of, at least at A&O Shearman, we have our thing, right? And within our function, it's definitely about that. Let's use the phrase art. I like it. Let's develop it. Like it's honing that art. It's like deploying it. It's having the opportunity to do it. It's doing it in a collegiate and cohesive environment. You will have a seat at the table. We don't try and take stuff away from people. That's boring for anyone at any structure. When it starts to get interesting, just gets whizzed off into the ether for a decision. We try to keep people involved in it, and we try to make it exciting. And there's a lot to be said for that over money or title. But I also appreciate people's views as to why they do make those views. Everyone's got personal views on that.
Yeah, I mean, I often think it's, if you're still learning, you're in a good position. And if we've talked about creating some visuals as well to help people see this, I guess. But those people that tend to focus on the learning element over and above everything else, it's not all about salary, it's not all about title, but that tends to end up over a longer period of time. Those two pair up better.
Than I'm still learning as well. Even on the most complex. We talk all the time at a senior level, balancing ideas off of each other, or what's your view or what's your view, and we've all got slightly different views or strengths, different perspectives, and that's the way to do it for sure.
Awesome. Well, Mike, look, it's been really fantastic having you on the podcast. Thanks so much for joining us.
You're totally welcome.
We really hope you enjoyed listening to today's podcast as much as we enjoyed recording it. If you did, please do us a huge favour and share it with a friend or a colleague. The more people we can get listening, the more time and energy we can get into recording more episodes and getting the best guests and the most interesting stories and insights. I want to say a huge thank you to the ICA for their support, to Ty and Karem here in the studio, and a massive thanks to Kat for making sure everything runs so smoothly behind the scenes. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, follow us on LinkedIn to make sure you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening.